I'm going to call our meeting back to order on Zoom or in. Make sure that the screen here is not muted. Back, we had a executive session. Resume part of our session, but of show here, we'll have several opportunities to participate. And evening that will have its own. If you're 6. So anyway, item 6, report of the public.
I'm fixing everything. So when
I just want to pause a bit just to make sure we are back online. That something is, and those for people watching on Zoom, apologies if the connection breaks here at Borough Council. We'll pause briefly and try to come back on. So we do try to make sure we stay online here. All right, so with that, earlier in the year or even last year, starting last year, in discussions about our water system, we have wanted to indicate that we have a time at each meeting to provide a bit of an update on what we are doing on the potential tailored water system. While we took action last month to pick between the 3 bids that we had to enter into negotiation with New Jersey American as the potential top bidder. Those discussions have started. Our attorneys and administrator in particular are hoping to exchange a draft of an agreement soon, maybe beginning of next week, at which point, similar to what we've done with the budgets, we want to have a lot of time as we work through negotiations, that every council person can have time with our attorneys and administrators. So Doug's going to start setting up, I may say small groups to have a lot of time to make sure everyone has a chance to dive into this document once we get it. And we are holding the 20th as a regular council meeting technically, but one that is not on a regular date, as likely a date that we would have executive session for some more opportunity for council if we've got questions or see where we are in the schedule of negotiations with New Jersey American. David or anyone else have any other thoughts to add on where we are? I know it's a little bit frustrating as these things start that we have to wait to the end of negotiations to talk about what the results are.
Right, we can't talk about negotiations, but I would say it's worth mentioning that in parallel to that process, we're doing a lot of data analysis just on sort of an ongoing work looking at our rates historically, looking at New Jersey Americans' rates historically. One of the things that we did with the RFP was to ask any of the applicants to give us 15 years of tariffs, so that we could look at the last decade and a half of their rates to see how they've changed. So that's sort of outside of the negotiations. It's really for us to understand that as a window potentially into the future when we're looking at the pros and cons of selling or not selling, but also comparing it to our own rate history. So I've been doing a lot of work on that, and in that process, also just preparing things that are right now in draft internal, but eventually that we will share with the public, so that when the time comes, that we actually have a draft contract that is out there for all to see. We will resume the public outreach that we've been doing and be, looking further, not only at the issue of the proposed sale, but also of the economics and projections and so on the other side of what would the implications be if we were to keep the system and so on. So a continuation of what we've done with additional detail. And then eventually also part of that is tying all those considerations together with the overall fiscal health of the town, because these things are related, as opposed to just looking only at the water department and rates. How does all that fit together? So in the background, in parallel to the negotiation process, we're working on a lot of analysis, but also in the process then developing materials to share with the public when the time comes that we can do that. So
And then the ultimate piece of the schedule is that we expect perhaps later this spring to have the results of negotiation as a document that could be shared both with the state and the public, with an eye towards this being finalized as a ballot question in early August, and then on the ballot ultimately in November, the general election for the community to decide. Lisa, any piece there that?
Yeah, just it's our hope really that agreement will be presented to council on March 20th. And at that time, and when it goes to the BPU shortly thereafter, it would become a public document. So it's a little.
So hoping for council's approval on the 20th. That'll allow us to send it to the BPU and get the clock started with the BPU.
With that, item 8 is our first of, I'll say 3 or 2.5 public comments. I'll take a moment, so I'll open the meeting to the public. Mayor and council will take comments first from members of the public attending in person, then from members of the public attending the meeting via Zoom. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes, or no immediate action can be taken on the public issues raised. To make a comment or ask a question during the meeting via Zoom, which we do have some Zoom users on there, push the raise hand button and we will promote you so you can speak with the room and make your comment. So first we'll start with the people in person. Feel free to come up to the front and state your name. No longer necessary to give your address.
Lynn Perugia, Chubby's Luncheonette, the owner. I would like to just talk for a minute about the ordinance that is up for vote today. And not too much about the details of the ordinance, but the process in which it comes to life. We live in a small town. We all know each other. Which ordinance, or the grease trap ordinance? Sorry. There aren't that many restaurants in town. And when something comes through, and I heard it on Zoom last month, then I forgot about it, and then I looked at this month's agenda and I saw it there and I knew it was a second hearing. I thought, why didn't anyone call the restaurants? Why was there no discussion at all among the people that this matters the most to? And I'm all for grease traps and clean pipes and people having proper sewer lines. But I don't understand how this town, where the restaurants bring in the most number of people to town, employ the most number of people in town, could be so disregarded. And so, I don't know, it breaks my heart actually that everybody in this town who runs the town didn't have the consideration to just say, let's have a meeting about grease traps. Tell me what you guys think about grease traps. What do you do? How does it work? Before an ordinance comes through, when today I called Barry and Aunt Mo, and they don't even live in town, so they wouldn't even think to look on the borough's agenda. And I'm wondering what we can do, not just for restaurants, but when there's an ordinance, what can we do to make people in this town feel that they're included in the decision-making? And I'm not sure what the answer is, but I do know that it matters. It matters that we feel included. It matters that we're involved. It matters that you hear our voice. And it matters that as a community, that we support the people who do the most in this town. And, you know, I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else. Nobody knew I was coming to speak today. But it's, I don't know, it doesn't bode well for small businesses. Doesn't bode well for the grease trap thing. I mean, whatever happens with grease trap happens, but it doesn't make me feel that the town is encouraging small businesses to participate in the community. And I would love to know how we can go forward. I would love to know, like, even if you guys just said, Lynn, can you call all the owners and get them together? I would do that. You know, I don't know what it would take, but it wouldn't take much.
I'll take a stab at this. This was a technical recommendation from our staff and health officer, resulting from a particular restaurant that has not complied with grease trap requirements, resulting in significant liability potentially to the town and damage to property owners, basements, and sewer systems. And the recommendation was to have a ordinance similar to our neighboring towns, and to provide some teeth essentially to help us in the restaurants that don't perhaps do what sounds like you do, which is maintain your grease traps.
I thought we were supposed to, I mean, I don't know.
You are supposed to, and we are happy that you do.
I mean, we have the inspections that we give to the health inspector. I mean, we have this file folder in our file cabinet. When the health inspector comes, he came a couple months ago, he said, where are your grease trap inspections? I hand him the file folder. He looks through and he says, okay, you're passed, you know, I mean, in addition to everything else, but so I have business not complied, they help responsible, you know, damages. That something happens,
Yeah.
I should be held responsible. And I think we all want to do the best for this town, you know, I mean, we're all, you know, we're all doing our best. It's more the process, you know, that I'm really concerned with. Because even though it's a technical ordinance, it's still, you know, it's a little different than what, I mean, I already do this stuff. I don't. That plumber that I don't know, I don't know his qualifications, I just know he comes with a big thing and cleans out the grease trap. But all of these ordinances, not all of them, this one in particular, would affect somebody perhaps with money, you know, who they're gonna get, or, you know, who they got in the past, and so small businesses, they budget for things like this, right? So when it's an ordinance and it goes through without any discussion for the people who it affects, you know, then it's gonna come down the line, oh, here, it's in your mailbox, and you didn't even know what's gonna happen. You know, I feel like we are a small community, we can talk about these things, we can come to a resolution. We can come to this resolution perhaps, but I just think we can do it in a better way.
Thoughts on that? Yeah, do you have it? Is there any particular comments on this one, or do you want to wait till we get to the actual?
Can I just recommend that any further discussion really on the grease traps? You just hold it for the public hearing, just for the benefit of the public.
Okay, so that's all, I just think it's.
Can I say something in general about business?
Please.
And it's, you know, now the liaison on EDC, Ethan and I talk about this every time I run into him at Chubby's. And one of the first questions I asked at the only real meeting we've had this year is, how do we contact businesses? And there isn't even a business directory possessed by the EDC. So I don't even have a way of contacting you. So that is, there's a lot that has been identified
Sherry, come on, there are 5 or 7 restaurants in town, you could
No, no,
walk
I,
around
I
town.
understand what you're saying, I'm telling you that I hear you. And I think this is part of a bigger problem, how do we communicate with businesses? Hi, family. And do the exact thing that you're saying, and I'm just saying that there isn't that mechanism right now, and yes, one of the
We
things
have
we're
a
gonna do is
mechanism.
walk around to all of the businesses and create this and have a survey of how we can do this better.
Wait, we have a mechanism, we have the Hopewell Borough Small Business, whatever it's called.
Downtown Hopewell.
Downtown Hopewell has a list of all the businesses, all you have to do is get that list. I mean, it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel. You could ask us, I mean, Deb, you know, I mean, the town has a list, you go to the library, they have a list of all the businesses in town. So it's not that hard, really, especially when it's something like this, when it has to do with food preparation, to know who it's gonna affect.
I'm telling you that I hear you, and I know it sounds like there should be a button that I press to contact everyone, and that does not exist right now.
Okay,
And
even if
there's-
there's,
It's in the works.
Well, hold-
It's in the works.
let's one at a
Yeah,
time.
so
Chair would-
I'm wanting to tell you that I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with you that there needs to be better communication. I'm sorry it didn't happen with this situation. But this, and I talked to Ethan about this, talked to Heidi about it, talked to Doug about it. Me personally, as a council person, grease trap. I didn't think very hard about grease traps. I don't know anything about them, and I figured, well, a grease trap is a grease trap. But this is an interesting learning lesson for me that I need to do exactly what you're saying. Look at every ordinance and figure out who does this affect. And my job as a council person is to protect you, but also protect the infrastructure of the town, which I never thought about fat and oil and grease going into the sewer system, is to protect the resident whose finished basement gets flooded every few years because I don't even want to know what. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I didn't do my job and consider all those moving parts on this ordinance last month. But now we've had discussions where I will be better at doing that, and especially reaching out to businesses. So thank you for your comments. They're heard.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I echo Lynn's sentiment that while, even if there's, and I want to apologize, I am a council person, I am a business owner. I was here at this meeting, when we had the first reading, and I admit, I was like, oh, well, in my mind, I think I mentally assumed that restaurants had been talked to, but I should never have assumed that. That was my error, and I sincerely apologize for that. Because I didn't start, I knew that I would raise my questions during this meeting, and I don't want to get into the details of the ordinance, but I just hear you 100% on the fact that this is a small town. And everyone, you know, the downtown Hopewell has a list, and we forward information. When people pass it to us, we forward it to all businesses. And we're a small enough town that personally, I apologize that I did not reach out to you sooner. Because I do think, I also don't know a lot about grease traps. We'll get into the ordinance later, but it seems like a conversation that the restaurant should be a part of. And I think that's important, that the restaurants are part of the conversation.
So also add that the process that we have has committees, you know, Board of Health, EDC, and we try to capture as many groups and balance that with the need to move things forward to get to this night, which is not intended to be the end all, but this is really the first substantive time to discuss a potential change like this outside of the committee structure. So the point of last month was to just say that's something we're going to be talking about, and the point tonight in a few minutes is to talk about it. And I agree with everyone on the dais and you know, that it is a challenging balance to figure out which things, I'm going to say what to hit people over the head, but you know, do require or would benefit from a particular level of outreach. I think myself, just in reading this and following along, I too didn't see it raised to that level, when the reasoning behind the changes, and maybe they are not trivial for a business, I think we'll be able to talk about that. But was the very not trivial impact that we were faced with a business that did not follow the type of maintenance that you're describing that you do necessarily, and the potential liability to residents, neighborhoods, and the town and our sewer system when we realize that we don't have the enforcement abilities to choose my word carefully here, but to ensure that everyone acts the way that your business does. And we'll be able to talk about that in a few minutes, but I agree with you and my colleagues here that, it is challenging to find that balance, and sometimes you see something on its face, you don't, you think through the impact to the really the residents with the numerous basement backup problems, and realizing at that moment that we don't have the tools to help them or to set that situation right, because not everyone does do what it sounds like. I don't know what best practices are for grease traps. It sounds like you very much do and implement them.
Yeah.
And thank you for that, by the way.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for your curiosity, going forward when we have these ordinances. No, I appreciate it.
Good evening, James Higgins. This is in regards to my favorite project. I like to call it Area 57, but 57 Hamilton.
Before you start, give your name for the record, and then
James Higgins.
sounds like we'll just confirm. I guess Lisa and I will go recuse ourselves, as we often do. For those who are not familiar with the redevelopment project at Hopewell 57, both our town attorney and myself have a professional conflict because of involvement of colleagues in the project. So we have not participated and will continue not to, and I will physically continue not to by exiting the room here for a few minutes. And hand off the gavel to Council President Mackey for the meeting. And the whole meeting, I'm not coming back. Just kidding. You get that, right?
All right, great, thank you. So last time I was here, and I apologize, I'm caught up on the website. I tried to do the best I can in the last couple of months. But you were able to get me a list of the properties that Jeffrey Elbert worked on. I'm just curious, is this the only list that he provided you? That you uploaded?
Yes.
Thank
Yes, the only list.
And did he provide any other documentation that supports this, or was it just this one page?
Just the list.
Fantastic. And in your following up on the references, did you reach out to Avalon Communities or any of the other properties to confirm his involvement, what his projects were? What he did with it?
I'm just trying to understand the
I
question.
don't understand the question.
Did you do a reference check on these projects that he worked on?
With whom?
Well, Avalon Communities is one of the largest communities and builders in the country. The projects that he mentioned were done 25 years ago. In June of 2024, in the planning board meeting, he indicated that he had worked on 7,000 projects. And he provided 5 with no supporting documentation, including 3 properties that were done 25 years ago. One is Avalon Run and Avalon East. So when I look to hire somebody or maybe hire a plumber, I do a reference check. So I've done that reference check. I've reached out to Avalon Communities. I've done business with them. I highly recommend that you do that. In reference to his only project that I can seem to research, which we talked about in board meetings, is the Bordentown project that started in 2007 and didn't get completed and subsequently was sold to Bordentown, New Jersey Township Has any of you ever followed up with the town, the mayor, or the administrator of Borden Town to find out exactly why 13-year project wasn't completed?
No.
That's fantastic. So I
Why
did,
is that fantastic?
because you should follow
Oh,
up.
if you're being sarcastic.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
fantastic that we're having this conversation, that, bear with me, I don't mean the comments, I'm asking questions, okay? I did follow up with the community. I highly recommend that we reach out to Borden County to find out why a project over a 13-year period didn't get completed. You're about to put a project down the street that many of the community has serious concerns about. We bring them up in the meetings. And all I'm looking for is to verify whether or not this gentleman has done any projects that provides confidence to the community. I sent out the emails, I made the phone calls to general counsel, I've spoken to the administrator. I highly recommend you do the same thing. Taking one piece of paper that doesn't verify anything about the projects that he's done is worthless. Verify, right? Trust but verify. That's all I'm asking. I asked if you've done it, you haven't. I recommend that you do.
Thank you for your comments. Then Ryan, how much I live?
He left, I think he left.
Right?
He was serious, he was.
They went to the process straight to the dog.
Put a beaver. Yeah, air tag. We're gonna put an air tag. So we're never-
Apologies for taking, any other in-person folks, looking to make a comment or question this evening before we get to the ordinance? Same thing online, push the raise hand button. Oh, please, come on up.
He's done a number of good projects. The Golden Town was My name is Mel Myers, doing the Borough of Hopewell, West Prospect Street. To start with, let's say I'm currently a fire commissioner, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Fire Commissioners. And you're not, I'm not. Okay. I see that you have an ordinance before you. It's very similar in wording to an ordinance which was adopted by Hopewell Township back in, I believe it was March of last year, to collect fees for ambulance services. I don't disagree with the reasons. My concern is simply, since the township is collecting for these fees, the only thing this says is that they are authorized to delegate the collection of such fees. Question would be, if one of Hopewell Borough's 3 ambulances responds to a call staffed entirely by our volunteers, the township is going to collect those fees. And there's nothing in this ordinance, and maybe there can't be, as to how the township then is going to reimburse the Hopewell Borough Board of Fire Commissioners. That's my only concern.
Excellent question. I don't know if anyone can speak to that yet. This came about by working with, I'll say some of your colleagues at Hopewell Fire to introduce it. So perhaps we can look into that in advance of our next meeting, if no one has an answer to that in particular. Our introduction was a way essentially to.
I'll verify that these are all their services. So,
But it's the services provided by the fire district, so I
Right.
don't know if that,
that's a shared service.
so it's not, that wouldn't include the rest, the borough rest.
It would, I mean, that would be the our
Oh, it's
district,
all
yes.
through, okay, it's all through the district.
Yeah,
Are we we're part of Hopewell Township Fire District 1? That's.
yes, that's my understanding.
Yes, right, we're, our district is,
We're
Yeah,
Hopewell
district-
Borough, District number 1.
yes.
Got it.
So I spoke to Sky about this one the other day at length, Sky Morehouse, right, sir?
He definitely does.
Oh.
He's another commission, yeah.
Yeah, And the way he explained it to me was that, right now, we don't charge for ambulance services, right? So it's gonna start that now, when someone needs an ambulance, they can bill that person's health insurance, right? Whatever payment they get would be divided between the three or the two boroughs that participate in this. I'm not sure how Pennington fits into it exactly.
So I think,
And that
So
if
it's the
they,
same percentages as the fees. Will
right,
be used to divide
Okay.
the
Thank
income.
so they'd be collected centrally on behalf of all of the districts,
Right.
regardless of where it was, and then shared in the same proportion.
in the same proportions, yeah.
Okay.
And if the person can't afford to pay and doesn't have health insurance, they would receive one bill and then it wouldn't be,
Yeah, soft billing,
Collected.
soft billing.
But
A soft
just to clarify because I think your question, Mel, was
more about the billing
well,
or the shared billing.
who, because it's the township that bills everyone, really, as it's written. How do we make sure that our district and, 152 get, credit for that essentially? And it sounds like the mechanism is they're all uniformly billed or collected by the township on behalf of everyone and then redistributed
Based on the
onto
percentage.
on the percentages.
Correct.
And I think it's a new position at the township. I don't think it exists now. Is that right, Sherry?
Yeah, that's interesting though.
Is there a way to just clarify that in
Yeah.
this ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it.
Yeah, it's a public hearing next month. We'll make sure we have the answers for you before
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
this came right from Will, right? This is like
Will and Scott.
the wording
Yeah.
was lifted, yeah,
Yeah.
but that is a great. You're always keeping an eye on the money. I like it. So maybe, I think that is worth.
Yeah, because one of the questions I had was that when they start collecting the funds, will our
Yeah,
budget go down? I think you saw that email.
Right.
Okay, it's too early because they don't have any, any historical data. Lower our fees to the municipalities. So once bringing in, there could be an overall savings.
And what's the tracking method? Maybe like a shared
Yeah, it's a
database where everybody
percentage,
can
right?
see like whoever just coming in, so we know what.
Yeah, they would, I envision that they would track how much they're bringing in, and then they have a budget, and now they have another source of revenue.
Right.
So that would be used to, to offset what they have to build the communities, I would think.
That would be good, yeah. But we
So
should track.
Maybe as a fault, so the emergency services in Hope Valley are this really interesting kind of Venn diagram of overlapping organizations. Many of which, like for example, our fire and rescue department and fire district are Hopewell Borough, while not part of our government necessarily, but Hopewell Borough specific. Whereas OEM throughout the valley is a lot of cooperation with Hopewell Township, both as a governing entity, the other two districts, those commissioners, and perhaps maybe a piece of follow-up we could do. And I don't know if you'd be Point or Skywood, but just to make sure we have things right. I know you're not speaking on behalf of the commissioners, but maybe it'd be a good follow-up for us to the, to our commissioners, to you guys, just to make sure we have this right from Hopewell's perspective. And I don't know if that's you, maybe that we can follow up with, would that be,
Not my concern.
okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
so seeing no one else in person, I don't see any hands raised online. So that slowly though, before I ask for a motion to close the first of several public
This is
speaking
recommended.
opportunities, I'll take that motion. All right, slowly made by Deb. Do I have a slow second to give anyone a suggestion? David's the slow second.
Well, I was the faster second.
All right.
Slow down.
All in favor? All right, thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to.
Our next item, number 9, is the minutes from our February 6th regular and executive sessions. Unless there's any comment or discussion.
I have a quick comment. Sorry, I got really excited about the ordinance that we're just talking about billing, and I mentioned it in February. And I don't know if this really matters, but just to be particular, that I said that they can now bill for ambulance services, and that wasn't accurate in February, so we're just now talking about the ordinance now.
The ordinance would.
Correct your
Rational
minutes.
exuberance.
It
Yes.
was, yes,
Will do.
thank you.
Thank you.
With that change, would you like to to incorporate that into a motion to approve?
Yes.
All right, do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
All right. So it's been so long, so we did minutes, so just make sure,
Just
this is a roll call, or sorry, this is a, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, all, it seems like everyone's in favor, so I don't need any opposed or abstentions, but thank you. Our next item is our second reading and public hearing, item 10 for ordinance 894, which is our grease trap maintenance ordinance. Reggie, if you could read that by title.
An ordinance of the Borough of Hopewell, County of Mercer, New Jersey, regarding the sanitary sewer system and grease traps specifically, and amending chapter 17 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Hopewell, 1975.
All right, Doug, you want to take a crack on a bit of an explanation on this one?
Yeah.
Start the discussion.
So we've had some issues with grease traps that failed. Probably weren't working properly. So what we've done, and of course, we said that the raw sewage backs up into people's homes. We had to bring in a sewer jet to take care of the problem on Lafayette, I guess about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, maybe. So this is in response to that. Roy brought to our attention that we're probably doing a lot of damage to our sewer system and to residents' properties. So we put some teeth into our ordinance. In this particular ordinance, so some of the things that we want to make sure that that we're legislating is that all the proper sinks and everything that's supposed to go into the grease trap is actually going into the grease trap. That we're not having sinks that they use to wash pots going directly into the sewer. Everything's got to go through the grease trap. So we want to verify that. We also want to verify that the grease trap is of a proper size to handle the amount of waste that's going through there, grease that's going through there. And the last thing we want to make sure is that the system is actually working as designed, functioning as designed. And that's where the ask to have a certified plumber come in and check to make sure it's working properly. Right now, there's inspections that are done. As Lynn had mentioned, people come in, they clean the grease trap. They try to determine how much of the grease is actually going through the grease trap, escaping from the grease trap into our system. You know, we want to keep that to a minimum. And that's all on what the restaurants currently provide to the health inspector when he comes, and also tickets for what's happened to the maintenance for the grease trap, and then also what has happened to the grease that has been taken away.
Right.
Okay, so that remains in here, okay? Again, the only addition with that is that we're asking that a certified plumber come in and certify, a licensed plumber come in and certify that the grease trap is actually functioning. Lynn had mentioned that, you know, we need an ordinance that has some teeth in it so that we can go back to the restaurants that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and this ordinance provides for that, okay? If they're not maintaining if it can be determined that they didn't maintain their grease trap, or if it's not functioning and it causes property damage, they can be liable for that, and also have to reimburse the borough for when we spend, you know, $1,000, $1,500 to have a sewer jet come in to clean out the sewer, that area of the sewer. So that's incorporated in here as well. So those are really the major points.
So, one of the questions I had, so, and you mentioned and that was great, you summarized basically all the aspects of this. Obviously, grease traps are only as good as the maintenance that goes on. But you also mentioned the issue of the capacity, you know, is the grease trap size correctly? So that's one question when you're putting in a new restaurant, but if you have an existing restaurant and you have a grease trap that's been there for years, you know, what are the options if the determination is that it isn't? So does that lead to, for example, a need for more frequent cleaning if it's smaller than it would be ideally? Or does that require that somebody actually put in a larger grease trap? And if so, what would be the circumstance? I mean, I'm just exploring this because, you know, if there's a determination that some establishment that's been there for years and had a grease trap that might have been approved at the time, isn't adequate, then what are the remedies? You know, maybe I'm just.
No, it's a good question.
I think it's important to think about.
Yes,
you know?
yes. And I'm thinking I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But we can find out.
Mhm.
I'm thinking if it's possible to increase the size to get into the new standard, I think that would be desirable. If not, I think, the Board of Health can work with the owner of the restaurant to say, this has to be cleaned, instead of instead of quarterly, monthly.
Right.
Or something like that, because of the limitations on, what they can do to increase the size. I think the borough's first choice would be to have it sized properly.
Right.
So you don't have that issue.
But we don't have that, that's not mandated in here.
No,
This
no, it just says-
is really just making
Yeah.
sure that the
This is
inspections,
maintenance.
that
This
the
is
plumber is
more-
evaluating it, that a competent person is looking at
Right.
it and making sure. And the issue about the connections is very interesting. This is one I hadn't thought about. I mean, it's similar in a way to our issue with sump pumps, we don't want people putting sump pumps into the sanitary for a different reason.
Right.
That's much cleaner water, but never occurred to me, but so
Yeah.
that is one of the benefits of having, obviously. Having the plumber there who looks at the whole.
Yeah, they
system.
reconfigured the kitchen, add a new sink, and it's like, I need the grease trap, that's a.
Yes, and you can have a business that moves an existing space and.
Yeah,
Do properly, so I
Yeah.
think that's all
yeah,
worthwhile. So anything in there that doesn't meet a certain standard, you instantly have to upgrade your grease trap, but. I would hope that in practice, what this means is we work a way of accommodating that or make it work, whether it's more frequent inspections or,
right,
something, so. Okay, thank you.
but this is just for the maintenance.
And maybe just I'll note. The only reference we have in our current code to this doesn't really require any maintenance or anything. It's in our food and retail establishment, our current ordinance, which it looks like was last updated in 2004. The only reference that says septic tank, which is not a frequent thing in the borough. And or grease trap tank pump out, maintenance reports must be submitted annually with the license renewal. It doesn't require any particular maintenance, doesn't require that they function in any way, you just have to provide the reports that you have. And my understanding from the interaction that we had regarding the backups and the need to jet out the sewer lines and the rest of the time to clean out the basements is that this language is not sufficient to have our health officer take any particular action when that happens.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so it's a good way just to have a little bit of teeth, so we can do something and have something on the books to protect everybody, right? Yeah.
So I'm just, historically, I understand that we just recently had an issue. Is this something that had been happening, like,
Yes,
and is there a reason we never had this conversation in this ordinance earlier? I'm just,
We didn't have time.
well.
okay, yeah, I mean, that's a valid.
Hold on, one at a time. David, you have the most history on this one.
Yeah.
I'll say, my recollection is that occasionally it had been referred to the Board of Health as something to explore numerous years ago, but just didn't ultimately result in a revised recommendation.
And Sky, in his role as our representative on the SBRSA, has raised this issue frequently. It is also an issue on the treatment side. So the more grease goes through, aside from the threat of causing clogs, fatbergs, as some people call them, in the system and backups, but it's also, it's expensive to manage and challenging to manage at the treatment plants. So the other part of this, beyond grease traps and their function is just encouraging everyone, don't pour that bacon fat down the sink because, but all this adds up. So it is an issue. It's apparently, and I don't know why, but apparently it's one of the more challenging treatment issues that they have. And so this is something Scott is always, I channel him now and then on this, but but yes, there've been.
So there've been conversations, but we haven't.
Right.
There have been conversations and I think maybe overall within our existing ordinances, people in, health officers and so on have worked to try to resolve this, but I think the determination was that maybe we needed something with, as Ryan said, a little more teeth to do it. Because there are certain areas that are problem intersections of the system and, so.
One other piece that, David, I think you might be a couple of weeks ago, which is a bizarre bizarrely unfortunate implication or impact of something very positive that the borough's done over the last couple of years, is that when you have a leaky sewer system, it means a lot of groundwater, regular water is getting into the sewer system, and we have to pay to treat regular water that goes into leaky pipe. That water also acts to kind of, at times, I suppose, not act as like a water jet cleaning things out, but that certain parts of the sewer in with grease. And so as we tightened up our sewer system to avoid sending rain essentially to our sewer plant, that there was actually less rainwater flowing to clear out grease, and it just hadn't
That makes sense.
occurred as much, frankly. And so
Right.
I think it is actually quite interesting that this situation, you know, we've been working on that for a while.
Right.
And this came kind of at the end of a extreme drought period as well, that there might have been an unusual historically amount of
Flow.
Yeah, that's right, it's extremely low,
So the clog happened in June.
right. And I don't wanna stray too far afield on this, but yeah. Somewhere, it's either in the state code or in another. Actually, it's the engineering specifications for sizing them when there's a new establishment, right? It's like, yeah, because, and is that under the state uniform code? So they determine the capacity of the state, okay, so we don't have to, I mean, we have to make sure that that's being
It
complied
would
with.
be part of
but
the plan, if a new
but that's-
restaurant opened or something like that.
Part of their
So
permit
that
application.
Strap plan gets
Okay.
approved by the.
So we don't need to
plumbing
address
inspector.
that here, so,
Right.
okay, that's good, okay, thank you.
So before open to the public, any other perhaps questions? We're nowhere near done with this, but questions with for our administrator or attorney before we open up to the public? See none, I guess I'll now open up the meeting to the public for a public hearing, an opportunity to be heard or comment on the grease trap ordinance 894. Please.
How are you? Ethan Nunnick, Coach Place. I just don't sort of understand some of the particulars here, so I was hoping maybe like to restate and understand like where this all came about. So there was like this precipitating event with a restaurant's grease trap backing up. Do we know for certain that the existing requirements were being adhered to at that restaurant? And so like, therefore, like, is it necessarily an issue with the existing requirements, or is it existing,
Yes.
or is it the issue
Yes.
with, oh, they were being?
No, it's an issue with the existing requirements. There are basically no requirements.
It was I guess, I mean, I'm maybe not so informed about this, but I was under the impression that under the current health code, you have to supply. Your invoices from your grease trap cleanings under a certain.
So this back and forth I had with someone on this. Hopewell Township requires that in their code, and I think some businesses have been following their code.
Okay.
And we're very thankful that they have, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
To have the regular maintenance and to actually have them looked at and maintained. The only requirement that we have currently is that you submit whatever reports you have annually. There's no actual requirement that you maintain anything, that they function. It's just not in our code right now.
okay, so maybe I was thinking, because I know the health department changed, I think it was like at some point it was Montgomery, and then it was the township, right, and then it went back. What is it currently?
It is Hopewell Township,
It is.
and it may very well be that other, I don't know, if they shared more stringent requirements than we actually had in our books, and perhaps great for everyone doing, I want to say the right thing, I'm not quite sure, because I will say,
But the health official can't
enforce the other towns. yes.
enforce the other towns. Ordinance, it has to be our ordinance.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, just throwing that out there, I mean, if you have. Assuming that a restaurant needs to have an inspection, these grease trap inspections usually, they have to have them quarterly. To maintain your grease trap, and you have that information in hand anyway as a precondition of getting your health inspection passed, yearly. Like maybe that information is all the source information necessary to know whether or not they're maintaining the traps, as opposed to that, like that
Well,
additional.
the other thing we're trying to capture here is that we have a licensed plumber verify that it's actually functioning.
Right, okay. But I guess I'm just playing devil's advocate, I'm just saying, wouldn't it be the case though, that if the grease trap inspector's there, I think usually they write down how much at what capacity the trap was at during the inspection, so they can say, oh, is it 90% or is it 70 or, you know, that sort of thing, like, it's just been my understanding, usually it's the case. The grease trap inspection and cleaning, that you could share that with, say, the town to, you know, provide enough information that it's being maintained without the additional.
And that may be, from our perspective, sufficient, you know, I don't think it occurred to any of us that any of our businesses were following, in fact, our new ordinance doesn't require the quarterly part of it.
Yeah.
And whether that's best practice or because at some point a health officer suggested or showed you the rules from Hopewell Township or Montgomery. This ordinance doesn't.
Every application is gonna be different, how often
Sure.
it has to be cleaned, because of the size, the use, it's all gonna be different.
Well, so the Hopewell Townships, for example, and maybe this is one that you're following, requires to be completely emptied a minimum every 90 days. There's specific things about the research, again, I'm thinking exactly what you do.
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
and requiring complete emptied every 180 days. Oh, sorry, that's the sewer system, but you know, just thinking out loud, that it may be that what you're doing complies with.
And this is not the most stringent.
Yeah.
Our ordinance is not the most stringent that we could find.
So it is possible that the 4 quarterly inspections that are currently happening would fulfill the requirements.
No, we don't do quarterly.
No,
No,
I
well,
no,
quarterly,
no,
but
the
if
quarterly reporting, I'm sorry.
Cleaning, yeah, well, the cleaning is a kind of inspection, yeah, it's a cleaning.
But
And
if
then
the
they
grease
take
trap
notes.
isn't functioning,
It is.
what's happening to the grease?
If the grease trap isn't functioning,
Right.
the grease trap's gonna be filthy, right?
Well, hypothetically, if the grease trap cleaning happened every 90 days and you had an incredibly busy restaurant that was just doing a lot of fat kind of cooking. If like, let's say, for instance, it was always at 100% capacity every time the cleaning happened, then maybe that information can be passed off to the town that, hey, maybe we need to up the intervals here for the
Mhm.
restaurant, they're busy, maybe it's 60 days and not 90 days, we wanna make sure that nothing is passing through. That would seem
Well, that's,
reasonable.
yeah, I mean, that's an important scenario that you're describing, because if you, I don't know, maybe you know how a grease trap is constructed, but basically you have a vault. And it has a sort of a baffle in it and the grease flows. Okay, so the idea is the water comes in at sort of one pump pipe that's fairly high, it exits on a pipe that's lower. So that floating material in theory remains in the tank, and what's exiting below, it's just like skimming fat off a soup, you know, the same deal.
Yeah.
So if the trap has too fat in it, it starts going out of that exit pipe. So you could have a trap that's completely filled and it's no longer functioning, and grease is basically going through because you've reached the capacity of it. So the key to that is how often are you maintaining, pumping out that thing relative to the rate of grease going in, which is different for every restaurant, it's different in the size of the trap, how long, you know, all those factors. So, you know, I think at some point in the picture, having a licensed plumber is a good idea, because you want to have somebody who understands the mechanics of the trap to look at.
Well,
what
especially
there's-
the connecting what waste water pipes, like an inspector is not gonna get into all
Well,
the pipes and stuff, so it's a good idea.
What, the two things, one, so you guys do it every 90 days, right? That's your practice?
Most restaurants do even have, I mean, I guess it depends on how your plumbing is configured, most of the time it would just be out of self-interest, if you don't do it enough,
Sure.
your own pipes will back up. Now, I guess in this particular case, that corrected feedback loop couldn't happen because it was, I guess the grease flew out of the facility instead of back into the restaurant, where it'd say, you know, you'd say, okay, well, now I gotta pick up the phone and call somebody and clean this thing out, so.
And I guess the second question is, what, I don't say type of person, but who does that type of service, in your experience?
Yeah, there's companies that just do it, just grease trap cleaning companies, they come, it's essentially just like a powerful wet vac. And they just
Right.
pop the lid off the thing and they suck all the grease out and they report, was this thing at capacity? Or was it say only at 20 or 30% capacity? If they're honest, they'll just tell you, hey, you know what? We only need to come every 120 days or something if you're not really busy, or if the grease trap, like Doug was saying, is gigantic relative to the size of your facility.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if I'm understanding when you and I spoke, that there's a difference between looking inside a grease trap and saying, yeah, that's
Clean.
clean. And then the second part is how is the pipe going out into the sewer? Is that, those are separate
Certified,
things?
yeah, we're looking for the plumber to certify that it's functioning the way it should.
Right, just the
That
pipe.
it's not allowing grease to go down through the pipe.
And that is not a thing that the grease trap cleaner guy can do.
Some grease trap cleaners are plumbers,
Oh,
so
so that could
good.
be,
Now, if you're using a larger company, they may not be plumbers, licensed plumbers. They're probably working for a licensed plumber.
okay,
But that's what we're asking for, make sure you keep it clean and just certify to us that it's working.
right,
It's working the way it's designed.
right, so you're
That's the
not,
big thing.
right. So it's feasible that you could combine that service and meet the needs of the ordinance. If you're grease.
Yeah,
grease
if
trap
the grease
cleaner.
trap cleaner is working under the license of a plumber,
Yeah.
it's just like, that happens all the time where. A licensed plumber has people doing work for them. They're not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You have 4 or 5 technicians that are working under a plumber. I think that would satisfy. They're signing under that license.
Right, so if they're doing it quarterly and once a year, somebody signs that certification, it's an annual requirement, right?
Annual requirement to make sure that it's working
Yeah,
properly.
right.
One time a year.
Yeah.
So the plumber could come out that time, the techs could come out every 90 days, and one time a year, the plumber comes out and just certifies that it's working.
Right.
And I imagine both our restaurants and our health officer who either get these reports or receive them could maybe give us some samples of what they tend to get. We can maybe compare the type of person to see, maybe that 90% of our businesses are actually doing something right now that would comply with our
I
new
think
ordinance.
probably 95% or 99%
Yeah,
compliant.
yeah.
So the only thing we're really adding here is little teeth to the ordinance. Okay, bringing it to everyone's attention and just asking for the business to certify one time a year when they get their permit that it's functioning as designed.
And have that
That's all.
certification come from a place
A
that has
licensed
a plumber.
plumber.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, and it may be, but we don't know that most of the restaurants who do this and perhaps are following the 90, the quarterly schedule, which our ordinance doesn't necessarily require, may already have that in hand and
Yeah.
perhaps are fully compliant, but
Yeah.
I guess it's a function of who they choose and whether that matches up with the new ordinance, and maybe that's something we can look at.
And from a practical standpoint, I would think, so there's gonna be an initial inspection by that plumber. Just also look at, as you said, the piping, make sure that everything is going into the trap that should be going into the trap, right? And then on an annual basis, it's just a matter of determining whether anything has changed. Presumably it becomes easier.
And
Right.
just that it's functioning.
Because
Right.
as long as the physical configuration of the system hasn't
Hasn't
changed, if it
changed,
has,
right.
then they need to understand why and how and make sure that that's, but otherwise it should be a pretty much a perfunctory thing and.
Yep.
In fact, if you have a company that's doing the clean out that does have a licensed plumber involved, obviously you get one-stop shopping, but
Right.
One last question for you,
Yeah.
or for at least for me, sorry.
Yeah.
I think the township's requirements that maybe some of our businesses we're looking at does require, it emptied or maintained every 90 days. I think our ordinance is really more, I hate to say fluid. But it's just as often as is
As
necessary.
needed. As needed. As
Do you have a feeling like is 90 days
Yeah, I would say.
appropriate, should, the minimum would not be inappropriate? I mean, we don't have it, but to add that would not,
Not,
that would be, okay.
that's not onerous, that's
Okay.
that's bare minimum.
Right.
I mean, restaurant should, like I said, should be doing that anyway. Usually, like I said, out of even self-interest, because there's gonna be, there's gonna be a nice reminder when, your pipes back up into your facility.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, I forgot to call the guy,
Yeah.
but it must have been in that particular case. The configuration must have been like that, it just. The piping must have been routed in such a way where, that didn't happen, it just the consequence fell on someone else, so.
Yeah.
But I think I'm with Ryan, I think that I'm just curious to know whether or not, if the same information can be gathered through that like routine cleaning and inspection. Then, maybe the plumbing thing might be redundant, the plumbing inspection might be redundant.
Technical question maybe for that type of change were to be made. After either tonight or some reflection and amendment, is that material in your mind? The type of person that would do that, like this is something we could reflect on and perhaps revisit without having to
Oh, maybe
reintroduce?
maybe
or-
table it tonight and then you're, probably. I
probably.
think,
material.
I think that's a substantive change. If you go from the current draft requiring a license.
So from plumber to, you know,
Just,
appropriate professional that's
Yeah.
not licensed in
I
that
do.
material.
I think that's a reintroduction,
So-
but
okay.
you can make that a.
Yeah,
And we need to understand what that professional's qualifications would be, other than running a back truck. So, I mean, I know that's what they do every day, but you know, they may have experience with knowing how the thing's supposed to look because they do it every day, but you know, there's all sorts of variations in people's qualifications and skill sets. So, and with that person, we still have that issue of verifying that the actual plumbing in the system is configured.
I think that's why we're asking for a license plumber.
Right.
Right.
So
I'll
that's
get into that gray
it goes
area.
beyond
Are
the
they-
actual
are they-
vault itself.
Are
It's
they
what's coming
qualified to
into
make
it,
the
so.
determination or aren't they?
yeah.
Right.
It's a licensed plumber, it's
Then you
just,
know.
Yes.
Once a
it is
year.
what it is.
Yeah,
So, I mean, unless there's some other certification that would apply, I think having a licensed plumber is,
I would agree.
that was just my opinion, but,
So we still did.
Two-
Well, I guess technically, I think we
yeah,
are
yeah.
still in a public hearing for which Ethan has made some comments or fielded a discussion with us, which I'm very pleased with how it's
Yeah, I mean, I
gone.
like,
No, I mean, it's, well, but for technically though, unless anyone has any follow-up questions for Ethan, that's the point where we're at now, and or if you have anything else to
no,
add.
not at all, not at all. I'm happy to correspond on some of the details and to do a little due diligence myself. It seems like you guys are also.
Discussions. Online. Happen again. So with that, I'll.
So one question to you as someone who clearly is far more familiar with grease traps than I am, because my familiarity is very limited. Doug was explaining that we need to make sure that the plumbing is properly connected. Could you see a scenario where the plumbing was not properly connected, but the grease trap cleaner would not notice? Just, would you not see problems?
Well, I mean, if grease is accumulating in it and upon every cleaning. There's grease that's cleaned out and then more grease accumulates in it, so it is collecting. And then as far as it discharging in terms of where it discharges, I guess, I don't quite know. But that's,
It could in theory be discharging where it shouldn't.
yeah, I think that's
Okay,
probably more of a
yeah.
question for David,
Okay,
as far
yeah.
as like when something gets into the
It
public
could be
infrastructure.
yes.
Yeah,
But I was just clarifying that, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think, I'm trying to think of, if you had a situation where you were, for some reason, there was a sink that wasn't connected to the grease trap, was bypassing it, maybe just because of, I don't know, there were two sanitary lines, or I don't know where the grease trap is relative to the, I mean, everything's. You know, it's a little bit analogous to the situation we have with sump pumps. It's a different. One of the things we do when action. They actually usually come into the house. We always verify that there isn't a sump pump that's connected to the system.
Right.
Because if it is, they're sending tens of thousands of gallons of water into the system that we're. But. You never know what kind of plumbing you have, so.
Helping
Well,
decision,
thank you,
please.
it's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Got it.
In person or online, please push the raise hand button to make known. To keeping the into a future meeting. Close it, I just want to get guidance on, or maybe straw poll about what people want to
I
think about
think
this
so. I
more.
think you want to keep it open.
Okay.
And just continue the hearing at a subsequent meeting and then continue your discussion. And at that time, if you want to make changes, then it's a reintroduction of the order.
One possible thing would be to carry this hearing to our next meeting. While. Or understanding your. To be done as if there were to be substantive changes, we would have to reintroduce something else at that point. Another alternative, I suppose, would be to not do that and just, reintroduce something new in the future. I'll add the if there's
Be a certain
All right, I believe we are back online. Apologies, everyone. To be as accessible as possible here. We were discussing a possible motion about whether to carry this to a future hearing date or do something else. I think that the carrying it would allow, if, for me personally, if we were to find out that the types of services that our businesses use now would fit the new ordinance with no change, I would be comfortable with no changes to the ordinance in that case perhaps, but that's just my thought. That's probably the only scenario where we would just not change the ordinance and have it be effective at a future time, but
I'm sorry,
thoughts.
let's change the proposed ordinance or the existing?
Sorry, if we were to carry the proposed ordinance to the
Right.
future date, the only thing we could really do at that point would be enact it as is.
Right,
And perhaps there might be some comfort in doing that if it turns out that the services that our restaurants already use have licensed plumbers and would comply with the new requirements without any change. That would certainly satisfy me.
Except that if the service has a plumber associated with it now, and then it does it in the future, and they don't find the pipes that are attached, the greater part of the system, right, that can't be seen immediately, that could be a gap that we're leaving ourselves open for.
well, and I guess, and I think, as always, I'm sure we've got restaurants that are doing everything they're supposed to do and following those best management practices irrespective of this, and then we have,
The one that isn't.
well, but. And again, this is always, when we talk about an ordinance, it's not a matter of the people in the room or the people that are operating today, it's going forward, it has to sort of be universal. My only, I think there is a benefit to having a licensed plumber, because you have a person that is in fact licensed, has a license to uphold, who's essentially making the certification. As opposed to whoever happens to be running the pump truck, and I don't know what their qualifications are, and that's the only reason, and. Ideally, if the person that's doing the maintenance on the grease trap can also provide that certification, that's even better. The worst case is once a year, a licensed plumber has to come in and have a look around, and you're gonna pay for an hour of their time, I presume. I don't know what, and I'm not saying that's incidental, but I think probably relative to the cost of maintaining the grease trap, it's probably a fraction of it. From my standpoint, and I'm always conscious of not wanting to impose a burden on a business unnecessarily. At the same time, the flip side is, if you don't have somebody making that certification who at least has some skin in the game from having a license and being a regulated, trained person, then I'm not sure. You can't always rely on who's gonna do. I'm not articulating this very well, but that's my concern, and I don't know if you share that.
I agree.
So I really the two options are yes tonight with the requirement as written in the updated ordinance that it be a licensed plumber, or carrying it without changing anything.
Right.
For us either to do something totally different at a future date, or to become more comfortable with the licensed plumber requirement at our next meeting. So I don't know that other than if someone were to want to just withdraw the ordinance, those would be the items on the table, or to revise it. I guess those are the four options.
I guess I see, I think it's most likely from what I've heard that a licensed plumber is gonna be part of this equation, but I also wonder, like, Ethan was talking about it sounds like we're already doing quarterly reports, they're just not in this ordinance. And those quarterly reports that you're doing might even be more important, if not equally important. It sounds like, I know for myself, I wish I had paid more attention to this last month. And also, I think this can't possibly be a super time sensitive issue if it's something we've been aware of for years, but haven't yet enacted. So just speaking for myself, I think there's enough complexities with this issue. And we've also heard from the business community, and I would agree with this, that something like this, it seems worthy of sitting down with some restaurant owners who understand the realities of their grease traps as well. I don't see a downside to taking an extra month or two to just make sure we get this ordinance right, because absolutely, I just wanna say the teeth where the business is liable for the damage. I don't think any of us are going to have any qualms with that. And that is, to me, that's the most important, and it's actually, it's very frustrating that this ordinance, you know, that we didn't deal with this quite some time ago, because it sounds like we're, you know, it's a good thing that we're tackling it now. I think Doug has found a lot of things that we were missing, and so I'm gonna celebrate that we're finding it now, but I think if it takes us an extra month or two to get it right, then I don't see it.
So you're saying you want to carry it?
Carry it.
Carry it, and then we will, you know, maybe meet with some restaurant owners in between, we can figure out in between if we need to start over from, you know, go back to a first reading, or
Yeah,
modify this in such a minor way that it can be.
I'm good with
carried.
carrying it as well.
So that would be my,
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just want to make one clarification though.
Yeah.
I mean, the reporting is something that goes with the maintenance. And that's always been a requirement, even though it was very generalized. That's not the same as inspecting the plumbing in the system and making sure that it's essentially saying, you've pumped it out, you're doing the maintenance you're supposed to do. So I don't, you're conflating the two and they're not the same thing.
but maybe we
So
need
the
the
reason,
Hold on,
please,
one at a
let
time.
me just finish what I'm saying, Heidi. The inspection requirement is something new. It is not the same thing as simply reporting that you've been doing maintenance all year. It's a specific requirement. I'm fine with carrying it, but I don't want to confuse this by somehow suggesting that somehow what people are already doing is meeting that requirement for the inspection. It's meeting the requirement for maintaining the grease traps for those who are doing it. But there's also the issue of whether they're sized properly, functioning properly, whether maintenance needs to be changed because they're either undersized or just the relationship between the amount of flow and the size of the thing. Those are things that I think are not going to be determined by a truck operator. Okay, so I'm fine with carrying it, but I want to make sure that we're not somehow confusing two very different aspects of operating these things. So-
I probably didn't explain this well, but it just seems like those reportings which are happening should also be in this ordinance.
It's in there.
It is, okay.
Right. Sorry.
So,
Before I take a motion, because we've been on and off online, so the motion would be to extend the public hearing for comments at a future meeting. Do have one online person who may also be telling us whether we're working on, whether the line is functioning as well. So before we finish, but not close the public hearing, I'm gonna promote one member of the public, hopefully for comment, and also hopefully to tell us we are actually working online again tonight. So I'm attempting to bring you over as a panelist, and if you can hear us, turn on your camera and microphone, we will give you the floor.
We
Yep.
are. Hi. Hello.
Well,
Grateful to
one second,
be.
if you can you? We are not able to hear you, so one second, let me, if you can hear us, we'll just keep vamping for a second while I make sure I understand what is wrong with our audio here. So give me 1 second, with apologies, this has not been a great technical evening for us. And I'm gonna
Turn your heater turns though.
try, there, we can hear you now, with apologies, this has not been a great night for our tech stuff.
That's okay. Yes, I lost you at one point. I was just, yeah, no, I'm grateful that the tech is there to attend these meetings. I think having sort of as a member of citizen in I'm Courtney Palmbush, by the way. I live on Model Avenue. I think the question that has just kept popping into my head is, there's a lot of, you guys have done a deep dive into the issue of the grease traps and the sewage system and all of that. And I appreciate that. I think that's great. I think, again, the question keeps rising in my head is just, so someone came up earlier talking about the question about the housing development that's coming. And I think what I'm noticing and what I just would like to hear you guys talk about maybe a little bit more is just why you understand the importance of doing a deep dive on, taking care of the grease traps and all of that. But it seems like there hasn't been that much of a deep dive on maybe, this Avalon properties and stuff like that. So how do you determine, what are your priorities, where you're going to allocate your resources in terms of expertise? We know you have a lot of expertise there. David Mackey is an expert on, a lot of things. Just how is it that, when citizens come forward and say, look, we would like more information about this. Have you done more research on this? We've sat here, those of us who are listening to the meeting, we've sat here for the better part of an hour talking about the importance of determining where grease is coming from in the grease traps. And yet there's this other issue. And I'm a little bit concerned about priorities. Not that it has to be definite priority, but I guess there's some, I would like to hear from you about how you decide what is number one on your table, what you're going to talk about, what you're going to research, what you're going to look into, and why.
No.
And thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second here. I'll be honest, we're in a public hearing about the grease trap ordinance, so we can perhaps get some comment about this and revisit this in a bit. I don't know how much that will be part of the record on the grease trap ordinance as we continue. I'll note personally that, thank you for pointing that out. It is challenging to figure out how to do this. We have, just briefly to talk about what our processes are for selecting things for ordinances that we have a rotating process advised by our professionals about which things we can do or which things are, in particular, this one came up because essentially there was an emergency, so we put it back to the top of the list. But we have a process where the council president and I and a rotating member work on our agendas, fed by things from our committees to try to get to. And certainly emergencies come to the top of the list. And we wish we could get to more non-emergencies from time to time. But anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Just to add, in this particular case, so we had an emergency, but it was also something that had recurred, generally speaking, over a period of years when it was our understanding that this was a problem that we needed to look at more intensively. And Doug did an extensive investigation and talked to our sewer operator, talked to homeowners involved, talked to various people. Tell me if I'm missing anything about, looked at the ordinances that were out there, as we usually do, looked at models of other ordinances, talked to our engineer probably about the technical aspects of it, construction officials to find out, what we basically take our existing ordinances and improve them to, where were the shortfalls in it. And that's the process. I mean, it's.
Met with the Board of Health Committee.
And the Board of Health, right? See, I knew I was missing some. So there were a lot of different people involved. And then at the end of this came to us with recommendations. And here's a model of something we think will work and will address the concerns. And that's the process. So. And this was, raised in part, but there was a homeowner who had a particular issue, but that raised just the larger issue of not just incidents, but, you know, because this has been a longstanding issue and it is something that we've talked about, something that we've addressed. I think the Board of Health, my sense is that the Board of Health inspectors have been addressing this problem in some level, but without the framework in an ordinance that it really needed, right? In other words, the mere fact we know, for example, from Ethan's and Lynn's testimony that, you know, restaurants are required to basically do maintenance, but we didn't have an ordinance that was really adequate. So there's a longstanding process of looking at our existing ordinances as these things come up and revisiting them and looking at them to find out how we can improve them. I mean, there's language in some of our ordinances that goes back decades. And you know, it's all voluminous. So this is a larger issue more than just one particular incident, and it's finally.
And I was not aware that this was a reoccurring incident until it happened a lot.
Until it
Yeah, I
happened,
was
right,
told
and then,
that it's been happening and happening and happening, so.
And
so
it's
we got
just
on
a
it right away.
system-wide concern, right?
Right.
So, and this brought it to the forefront. It's the best explanation I can give it. This much appreciated.
Anyone else want to add that? I see Courtney has her hand up. This is, we are gonna, I think there's gonna be a motion to carry this public hearing into a future date. Well, there'll be additional time to put comments on this particular topic. Honestly, the how we got to the ordinance is less relevant to the time. So if you've got a substantive comment about grease traps, I'm gonna allow that, but beyond that, we're going to continue. I think it sounds like the pleasure of the council is to continue the discussion on grease traps to a future meeting, so there will be additional opportunities as well. But again, if you have a substantive grease trap question, I'm going to bring it back briefly, Courtney, but on that issue only, because this is a public hearing on the grease trap ordinance. So.
Sure. I just, can you hear me?
Okay, answer you. Yep.
Okay. No, I got disconnected. And so I wanted to just finish kind of the question, which is not so much about the grease traps. It's more just about that there seems, you know, there's a lot of due diligence being put in around this. And I think the question I was asking more so was like, I appreciate it. I admire the due diligence put in on this question, but it sort of feels like maybe there's some disproportionate, effort being put in on some things versus other things. That's my real question. And I don't say that antagonistically. I really genuinely am curious as to why some things merit nearly an hour-long conversation and other things are not getting that kind of attention. So that's I just wanted to clarify my position on that because it ended before it just didn't quite finish.
I appreciate
So,
and
thank
you
you.
got. I'll be part of the record here on our grease trap ordinance. I'm gonna bring you back to a attendee mode for a second here.
Sure.
And again, I don't know if anyone else on council, again, thank you for those comments. We did get some substantive feedback on our process as part of that back and forth. Anyone else have anything else? No? Okay. So seeing none, we are not, I believe, I would entertain a motion to carry this. Do we need a specific date? Or we just carry it to a future meeting, next meeting? Next meeting is on the 20th. Or should we
Carry it to a meeting, right?
Or should we carry it to our
Our
regular
monthly meeting.
why do we apologize?
Yes, carry.
Technically, the 20th is a regular meeting because it's the beginning of the
Carry
year,
it
but
to our
our
April meeting.
beginning of the April meeting, would be the pleasure. Okay, so, for those interested in this issue, we will return. Obviously, we would take comments in between. I think there'll be some outreach between, the speakers here tonight and many of us, to gather some more information as we, think about this further. Obviously, if we plan to have a meeting that would not have this on the agenda on the 20th of March, where we would also may not be the best time for comments because it's not part of the public hearing, but it's another opportunity to hear from us. But the discussion and hearing this will be continued at our April council meeting. All right. Thank you.
Do we need a motion?
Oh, we do need a motion. I'll take a motion to do that, sorry. Presumptive. So Krista, a second.
I'll second.
Heidi, thank you so much. All in favor is all right for this one, or we need a roll call?
I'll do a roll call.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Ms. Hook.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Ms. Steeler.
Yes.
Ms. Weaver.
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Right. Our next item, and we do have an item that came out of our executive session that I'm saying out loud to remind ourselves to make a motion on that, but I would first entertain a motion on our consent agenda. I want to thank our personnel committee and staff.
We're skipping 11.
Do you have 895?
No, I'm sorry, my apologies. I'll take a ordinance 895 first reading on the ambulance fee ordinance, if we could read that by title.
An ordinance of the Borough of Hopewell in Mercer County, New Jersey, establishing fees for the provision of emergency medical services and ambulance transport services, and amending Chapter 2 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Hopewell, 1975.
I'll give a crack at this and allow perhaps Sherry or anyone else to jump in, but we have been requested, working with our partners, I think as we perhaps talked about earlier in the evening, to enact a framework to allow the fire companies to bill insurance for ambulance calls. And this would be introduction ordinance to allow that type of framework to occur. Some of the highlights are, though, that if there would not be any, I don't know if the word is balanced billing, but ultimately if you do not have insurance, they would not be seeking payment from uninsured people who do not have the funds, but only insurers in doing so. There was a comment before. I think we have a little bit of a clarification to confirm prior to our hearing on it at our, I'll say our next meeting, but I want to be clear on this before I said, would we plan on taking this at our currently scheduled March 20th meeting or our beginning of April meeting? It's something that hadn't occurred to me before. Doug, you have a thought on that? Do you think we'd have enough time for clarification on that ambulance issue to carry this or to have a public hearing at our second March meeting? Or is there
Why don't we do it in April?
We'll do it in April, okay, all right. With that, I'll take a motion to introduce.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Ms. Hook. Mr. Mackey.
Yeah.
Ms. Steeler. Ms. Weaver.
Yeah.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. So just again, for the record, while we will likely have another meeting on March 20th, the public hearing on this ordinance would be at our April council meeting. So with apologies for almost accidentally skipping that, move to item 12, motion, look for a motion in block for resolutions 2025-46 through 48. Two things I just personally want to note again. I want to thank our personnel committee, Doug, and our PW staff for a great job in identifying a new employee for our DPW. And I also want to take the time to thank Doug in particular and our finance team. Just take a moment to reflect on our railroad project, our railroad station restoration project. If all of you recall, we had received a grant for approximately $250,000 for what we thought would be a $500,000 project. With time and further deterioration, the project increased considerably. And we have, under Doug's leadership now, identified 2 additional grants where ultimately a much larger project, almost $1 million worth of work, is going to be done at taxpayer costs, essentially less than our initial estimate of matching the $250,000 grant. This is the next step in that third now grant from the New Jersey Historic Trust, but, in making that, I just want to just thank Doug and his team for finding the funds to make this, possible, to continue the project and to, frankly, the original estimate, if not less. It's quite a feat. So Doug, thank you. With that, I would take a motion though for the three resolutions.
All motion.
Second,
Any discussion? Right, sorry.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Hook?
Yes.
Mr. Mackey?
yeah,
Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Ms. Steeler?
Yes.
Ms. Weaver? Ms. Lanius?
Yeah.
All right, our next item, this is maybe the first time that I can recall us doing this, but we have a walk-on resolution.
I'm gonna read it when you're ready.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Good. Let me, I'll preface it, and I'm glad you took good notes. So, before this meeting, we had a executive session to get legal advice from our attorney handling two pieces of litigation for us. One of which is a lawsuit that Verizon brought against Hopewell Borough more than a decade ago about the taxes we collected on literally the value, property tax value of their wires in town. After more than a decade, we were successful in keeping the taxes that we collected. We were right, essentially, the courts upheld. For the first year, 2009, and each property tax case is a different year. And so there has been a case essentially every year since now and then. About 2016, our attorney and experts determined, frankly, that there was a crossover period where we should not have been collecting the taxes anymore, and we stopped. There's this all goes to a statute that when phone companies were slightly deregulated, there was competitive phone companies, the question became, well, if there's three phone companies, who pays the tax? And the rule was, if you have 51% of the phone lines in the area, both of those things are very amorphous that we spent thousands of dollars defining and debating what those things meant, that you're the one who paid the tax. And at some point between 2009 and today, Verizon no longer had 51% of the phone lines. Our attorney, Joe Torella, did a great job winning for us and essentially allowing us to keep all of the taxes that we've collected on this and put us in a great position going forward, not to have exposure, to have to pay back Verizon for things perhaps incorrectly collected. So we met with him, and he has a settlement offer that we would essentially like to authorize him to continue working towards accepting, which essentially would allow Hopewell Borough to keep all of the taxes that we've collected from them. And that we would continue likely to not, we stopped collecting taxes with them in about 2016, and we have no plans to do that. We don't care about saying this, but our experts believe that we at some point became under that 51 threshold, and we see it staying there. Do you want to read it and then I'll ask for a motion? Is that maybe? Okay.
All right. Resolution 2025-49, be it resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Hopewell that Joseph Torriello Esquire, counsel for the borough in the pending Verizon litigation, be authorized to finalize a stipulation of settlement in the Verizon lawsuit, and that the mayor be authorized to execute the settlement agreement.
All right. Any perhaps questions for anyone on this? Otherwise, I would take a motion to authorize the settlement as Reggie read.
I'll move.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks so much. We do a roll call on this one?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Hook?
Yes.
Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Ms. Steeler?
Yes.
Ms. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Lanius?
Yes.
I'll just note again, our appreciation for our attorney in getting us to this point. We have been, this was a David and Goliath situation where we were successful, and this settlement allows us to kind of confirm our position that way, and I'm very appreciative of the efforts working on our behalf.
Did you mention that it went to the Supreme Court? And you did, it was just one person.
That's right, you know, this was a tax court matter that was upheld by the appellate courts and, as David said, by the Supreme Court. It's one of those things where we were picked as the, I don't want to say poster child, the Bryson singled us out. And I'm happy to say we were eventually successful, we could put it behind us, so thanks to everyone involved.
Yep, that's a good one.
Alright, next we've got two appointments, I know with several coming up.
Claims for payment.
No, I don't think we need to pair those this week. We have- I'm gonna do every other item going forward. Apologies, item 13, motion to approve claims for payment.
So when you're absent, the
I'll
council
motion. I'll second.
should pay every 60 days.
Who's the second? I'm sorry.
They can.
I was first, I second.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Ms. Hook,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Ms. Steele,
Yes.
Ms. Weaver,
Yes.
Ms. Lenny.
Yes.
With that, we've got two appointments, and I'll just want to get, one is a reconfiguration of one to an alternate position, and one for our Board of Health, and I've had several other interviews this week and expecting some more appointments at our next meeting. So I'm very appreciative of everyone who volunteers in the borough. And unless you're already talking with someone about an appointment, and we've talked to one of the council people, and you're interested in serving on a committee, please see us. It at times is a little tricky, as it turns out, to figure out if we have spots available. I was very happy. Briefly thought there wasn't, and I'm glad there was. So with that, I think those are just for the record. Next, we'll do our liaison reports. And Anthony, you want to start on your side if you've got anything this month?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Board of Health actually did not meet this month, but still got a few updates. So you just mentioned the new member, Amy, who also ended my shortest ever stint of the new kid on the block, since it's only a month since I joined. Also, the board asked us if we would approve and allocate the annual membership fee for the board to join the New Jersey Local Boards of Health Association with $95. It's for membership April 1st through March 31st, and it's probably the only forum that we have to coordinate amongst these different boards of health. So they'd appreciate our support for that. I've also been in touch with the Greater Mercer Public Health Partnership, which is connected to that by Gary Dorsey, our health officer. And they've mentioned two events that they wanted us to flag. So first of all, there's a community advisory board meeting on Tuesday, March 18th at Capitol Health. And that's to talk about the community health improvement plan and also programs about fight food insecurity in our community. And secondly, there's a couple of community listening sessions in relation to the opioid settlement advisory council. One is in Trenton on 19th of March and also in April in Robbinsville, April 8th. So that will be a chance to learn about how some of those funds could be used to address services that support opioid use disorder and other forms of substance use disorder. Well, that's it.
Thank you. We'll go, like, what's the members math from middle school? Was it full method or first,
Okay.
outside, inside?
Outside?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you want to go next?
The other outside.
Yeah.
The green team, the Borough Green Team is actually meeting a little later this month. Our Sustainable Jersey grant, has been extended through the end of September. We're working on, as part of that, a composting workshop, and a mailer, which will be going to all the homes, for all the borough residents, as well as continuing our potlucks. We are in need of more Trex volunteers. The plastic recycling is going very well. The primary thing we need a volunteer for is helping to drive the plastic from Hopewell Borough to Wegmans. And the reason we're looking for volunteers for that is we don't want the environmental impact of me making a dedicated trip to Wegmans with plastic in my car is a little silly. And a lot of people go from Hopewell Borough to Route 1. So if folks are able to do that, and just so you know what it involves, actually Sherry did it this morning, thank you. Yay. You take a load of plastic, you get the cart from the cart corral, you fill up the cart, you take it to the customer service desk and you say, this is for next truck, this is for next trucks.
She said, leave it here.
And you leave it there and you text a picture from your phone to my phone.
I did.
And she did. So, if anybody can help with that, they can reach out to me. Open space, I went to my first Hopewell Valley Open Space meeting. It was fairly uneventful for the first meeting of the year. I have to say but they did discuss a possible upcoming request from the township to allocate some open space funding for the restoration of the corner schoolhouse. And that's something that as a committee, we were gonna ask for more information about, and so nothing happened.
Thank you. Debbie, yours?
Hi, so the Recreation Committee is getting very close to having our annual event flyer done. We're meeting on Monday to finalize it. Thanks to Janice Schroeder, who year after year does all of that work for us on the PDF to create it. Reggie actually talked about what color paper we have this year, so you'll let me know. So that should be going out to everybody next couple of weeks. Library board met on Monday. Dr. Treese is the superintendent of schools in Hopewell is going to be joining the Hopewell Borough Library Board, which we're very excited about because Mark, our school representative, is involved with the funding, I think, of the referendum. So there's sort of like a conflict. So he decided, he's very busy, so he's stepping aside. They are working on events and fundraising, and they're working a lot with Doug to realign the financing that was kind of part of the borough and is moving over to the library as its own entity. So that's in place. So thanks for all your work on that, Doug. Personnel committee, as was mentioned, we hired the new public works employee, and that's about it. Thank you.
Sure.
So EDC is working on their yearly plan that we need to submit, so that is coming. Thank you to the mayor who alerted us to 2 county grant opportunities for businesses that will be circulating to them. One is for signage and facade improvements, one is for sort of standard business expenses, so I'm coming to talk to you, Lynn, and everyone else, but it's really, it's nice, it's like a reimbursement expense, it's pretty.
Thank you.
Pretty hefty. And some immediate needs that we've identified, that Ethan and I will be working on among other EDC members. Hopewell Fire Department responded to 37 calls in January, EMU responded to 40. And then I'm sure everyone knows about the crazy fire over at the Poor Farm Road, is that?
Yeah, Poor Farm Road,
So
yeah.
they've been very busy. Let's see what else. Senior Advisory Board, short notice, but tomorrow they're having the county is having a social services program review for seniors and family members at the township building. And as always, you can find more information on the website. And Shade Tree Committee, it has approved Lyndon Horton, our local Eagle Scout, his project is approved, and he's planning. He's gonna raise funds and plant 6 service bearing trees on Prospect along the East Prospect along the cemetery. Tiny bit of tree knowledge for you. A service berry was named that because it's like the first tree that blooms in the spring, and that was the first time that people, I don't know, I'm laughing about this, but when you had, in the olden days, someone passed away and you wanted to bury them, you had to wait for the ground to soften up, and so when you were able to dig the grave, it was at the same time as
service.
So it's, right,
Oh.
so bloom during your funeral service, so, and then we're planting by the cemetery, it's all coming together. Yeah, so hopefully by spring, we'll have 6 new trees.
Excellent.
Not a lot of trees.
Morbid?
Yeah, that's right.
Dave, go ahead.
Water everywhere. So we put out our public notices for PFAS, and as everybody knows, because you got them, thanks to the water supply team for working on that. And nice to get the PFAS thing onto 2 double-sided pages for you. I know, thank you, Ryan, and there was another notice, so with it has to do with our zinc orthophosphate issue, which I won't bore everybody with the details on, but anyway, suffice to say, the PFAS numbers are still within the state standards. There've been nothing, no change there, which is all good news. And the issue of the zinc orthophosphate was that we had last year had a problem with, it's an injector that injects zinc orthophosphate into our system, well number 4, which was not operating properly and had to be replaced. And now the zinc orthophosphate levels are where they should be. Purpose of zinc orthophosphate is to, it's an anti-corrosive additive in very low concentrations, and it helps to reduce or minimize the amount of copper and lead that leaches out of pipes, and so it's working fine. And our copper and lead results have always been below the standards. Never in my 27 years have we ever had a violation for that, so it's fine. But anyway, that's back in shape. But that's why you got the additional letter in case you were craving more information about water treatment. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing a lot of data analysis in support of just, ongoing analysis on the issue of possible sale of the water system, looking at our rates, looking at the rates of rate structure and rates of New Jersey American historically, and the comparisons, and all that information will be put out to the public when we, kind of resume our public outreach on that. And basically everything that I do, I end up putting right into PowerPoint slides at the end, so we're ready to get that out there. We've been working on an FAQ document also on the water system and the possible sale process as well. So lots more to do on that. And we had, Doug, how many water main breaks this year or leaks? It's 5?
So far this year, 5. yes.
5.
Yeah.
And yeah, in 2 months.
At the cost of.
Brutal. Well, we haven't even gotten the bills for all that they're having.
Yeah, probably,
It's a lot.
probably about 34,000.
Yeah, one that was just agonizing because in an old system, if you ever tried to repair a toilet or a sink in your house and you gotta shut off the water and the valve doesn't close all the way, or it leaks after you open it back up and all that. Well, imagine if you're doing that on an 8-inch water main, and that's what our guys were struggling with, trying to isolate what would have been a simple repair in front of the museum last week. And that's why there was water all over the bay. It's just they finally got it done, but it was a struggle. And it's just one of the challenges of working with an old system. But they did a wonderful job as always, and we were very attentive. So thanks to all. And I think that's all I got.
All right. Kristen?
Mayor Kennedy and Doug and I met with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission to discuss the demonstration project for North Greenwood Avenue. We are currently reviewing concept plans and talking about maintenance and placement. We are still aiming for implementation in late spring. It is my hope that once this project proves to be a success, we will be able to implement similar traffic calming measures elsewhere in the borough. You may have seen in the last borough email blast sent out on February 23rd that Mercer County is in the process of putting together a Vision Zero action plan with the goal of reducing the number of people killed or seriously injured while traveling in Mercer County to 0 by 2050. Vision Zero is a worldwide strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. The link to the project website and the survey to collect your thoughts are available through the borough website. Once the survey is complete, you may enter to win for a chance to win a $100 gift card, and maybe we can send this out again this weekend so everyone can get another chance at it. I attended the New Jersey 2025 Strategic Highway Safety Plan Strategies Workshop on February 26th. It was an event hosted by the New Jersey DOT, where we discussed strategies to improve road safety throughout the state. The main focus was on education, but I was heartened to find a vocal group of supporters for automated enforcement, which should be a no-brainer when we talk about improving traffic safety and saving lives. Also, the 14th Annual New Jersey Bike and Walk Summit will be held on March 29th. That's a Saturday in Princeton. This is a really fun event with lots of interactive sessions that is organized by the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, which is a statewide advocacy organization. I will be a panelist for a session hosted by the Safe Routes to School Academy. And the session is going to be about engaging with one's community to build better streets, and early bird tickets are on sale until tomorrow. And I know that you expressed regret at missing the last one,
Yeah,
so
what, remind me the date again of the
it
conversation?
is Saturday, the 29th, and it's right in Princeton, so it's nearby. I just want to point out that conferences like these are critical opportunities for Hopewell Borough to grab a seat at the table in broader regional discussions about traffic safety and to build relationships that can help us accomplish our local goals. Our participating shows that we are invested in the broader community, and winning support from the state, county, and regional partners paves the way for us to strengthen the cause at home. Our borough's dedication to improving traffic safety is known well beyond our municipal boundaries, but there is still much work to be done. Our accomplishments thus far show that we are willing to put in the work, be creative, and persevere despite having limited resources. This makes other organizations want to work with us and help us achieve our goals. They know that safety is a priority and that we will follow through even if the odds seem stacked against us. We made a lot of progress in changing traffic laws in the borough, and the Hopewell Township Police Department have been great partners. The next step is to add traffic calming measures like we're working on for North Greenwood Avenue to slow vehicles down and help the borough reach our goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries caused by traffic violence. Slower speeds save lives. Now to transition to history. I was fortunate to attend the plaque dedication for the Van Ness Collette House on Sunday, February 23rd, and that's the big house next to the museum in town. This house, like many in the borough, has a rich history. It was the site of local organizing efforts to pass the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution to secure equal voting rights for women near the turn of the last century. A local author, Nancy Kennedy, was there to discuss the history of suffragists meeting at the house, and of course in full costume, which my kids thought was pretty awesome. If you've ever wondered about the history of your own home or thought about how to commemorate it, please know the Hopewell Valley Historical Society provides a historic lineage program as a fundraising activity. Their website states, the House Lineage Committee researches the history of old houses in the valley. Homeowners who would like to have their house researched can obtain the services of the committee. This may result in a plaque being produced for the historic house, a presentation about the property, and or a newsletter article about the structure. And this is a fun and interesting way to journey to the past and support a worthy local organization. There's a flyer in the back of the room for anyone who is interested with more information, and you can contact the Hopewell Valley Historic Society for more. And lastly, I spoke with Mayor Kennedy and Councilwoman Cook yesterday about inviting some first graders from Hopewell Elementary School to Borough Hall for a little field trip. Whenever I bring my kids here, they have a great time, and I love sitting at the dais and banging the gavel. So I figured that during the trip, the kids could learn about the services the borough provides, and we could maybe hold a mock council meeting with children taking turns playing the roles of council members and also being in the public. It just seems like a really fun way for kids to get a glimpse into the importance of being civically engaged and also how rewarding it can be. The end.
All right, thank you, everyone, both here in person and online, and everyone on the side of the dais and our staff as well. A lot of work from everyone involved in the borough, volunteers and professionals this month. Reminder, this Saturday, I've got my coffee hours at 9 o'clock here at Borough Hall. I do bring coffee. No one ever drinks it. But no, it's not bad. That would be.
Yeah.
That's actually that's an interesting idea. Anywho, I want to thank again the members of our community, particularly the faith community and our business community and our library. We are still working on gathering our various stakeholders for an event information for our community impacted by the recent changes in immigration policy. Councilman Fuller is going to be assisting on with me on this, sorry. And for members of our community, please reach out to either of us, and that goes to people on this board interested in helping put that together. More to come as that coalesces. I'm asked from time to time, and I try to provide an update on what we're doing with, I'll say, abandoned or derelict properties in town. I will, without being specific, because it does make it a little harder to get done what we're trying to do from time to time. But the borough, both myself and staff, remain in regular contact with many of the owners that you might expect need to be contacted with. I'll say some of the discussions have been encouraging, but until there is actually change, we're not going to stop doing that or looking at other enforcement actions, and that includes perhaps changing our ordinances to allow for additional enforcement. Well, I'll ask our community, while we all feel like we know that these things are there or that someone's seen it, it actually is quite helpful. I'm not looking for an avalanche of things, but don't assume that it's been complained about. It actually, when it comes to enforcement, it's very helpful to have a variety of information from residents. So if you are concerned with something, it is always appropriate to send a message either to myself, our administrator, Doug. If it seems like a health issue, our health officer is available, our zoning officer, and ultimately just when it comes time to take some type of action on something that may be negative in town, the more information we have in a file, the better chance that we have as a governing body to take action on something like that. But it continues, and I hope to have specific positive things to report soon. I want to invite the community and the council's been invited to a series of open houses the school district is having, particular one about our elementary school that's coming up that I will send the information about. I'll note, so I remember when I do that to make sure I remind everyone that if we are planning on attending to make sure we coordinate so that we cannot have more than 3 of us really in a place without noticing it. Excuse me. When I say noticing it, I mean not that we see that it happens, but providing public notice for more than a core of us to be at a meeting. We've also been invited, the community as well, to Mercer County's Vietnam War Veterans Day commemoration on the 26th of March at 11 o'clock. At Parkside Avenue County offices. I'll send that around as well. I want to thank the Hopewell Fire Department and all of the volunteers there. Congratulate them. Everyone was honored at their annual dinner this past month. I'm very much looking forward to honoring some of the deserving members there at the 2nd annual Hopewell Valley Mayor's First Responder Awards ceremony that's going to be on June 7th. At Woolsey Park. More information as it comes together. But if anyone in our community has a specific first responder that they excuse me, believe is in need of particular accommodation this year, please let me know for these awards. So I do coordinate with the chiefs, of course, and our liaison. The borough is involved in the excuse me, statewide master plan apologies, cross acceptance process with Mercer County. Every period of time, the state, just like the town has a master plan for its zoning, the state has an overall master plan for the state. We are attempting to participate with our other Mercer County towns and the county planning department on comments to the plan. That is, there was a meeting last month and we're expecting some perhaps action later this month and this spring for the state's master plan. You follow what we've been doing on affordable housing, just a quick update. At our January meeting, we approved our intentions to make good on what the state believes our affordable housing numbers are. And we'll soon be working on a plan to accommodate that. I'm happy to say for Hopewell Borough that the time period for outside parties or developers or the Builders Association to challenge what we've done has expired without them doing so. So several hundred towns in the state received challenges. We did not. I'm very excited to continue to try to put our money where our mouth seems to be on evidencing our community's dedication to accessibility and affordability through this plan as we go forward. The Hopewell Valley Mobile Food Pantry is having its open house on April 13th. I'll send our information to council if anyone's like to attend. This is their 5th anniversary and congratulate them on the good work that they're doing along with so many other nonprofits in our area. The planning board met last night a short meeting, like the council. They have listed several other meeting dates, not just the once a month that we're used to. So they will actually have a meeting on the 19th in, a little less than 2 weeks. It is expected that there will be a hearing that night on an application. That unfortunately had a notice problem last night. The board's doing their best to accommodate, quickly returning. But if you received a notice about that, it will be renoticed for the next meeting. But it's likely that that application would be on the 19th. Thank our communications committee. We spent a lot of time looking at possible website enhancements and vendors. Certainly more to come on that in the coming months. And I just want to finally note, just to thank Doug, has worked out the details of the Hopewell Valley OEM communications. We have an email system. If you sign up on the Borough website, you'll get an email usually once a week with updates that have been on the website, or as we've done, unfortunately, often the last couple of weeks, when there's been a water main break, we'll send an email out that day to let people know if it's been repaired or an expected disruption. We will soon be able to coordinate additional notifications through the Hopewell Valley OEM and Hopewell Township Police Department emergency text system. This is called Everbridge. There will be an email out on our system reminding people to sign up for that separately. We really think everyone should be signed up for both. The emails, which tend to be, I don't mean to say the things we do are not important, but more likely that trash isn't being picked up or reminder of a meeting schedule. And then for emergent things, we're going to start to utilize the resources with our surrounding governments for that as well. So on our website, you'll see the same spot where you would sign up for our newsletter and emails is a spot to sign up for Everbridge. And I do encourage everyone to sign up and thank Doug for closing that loop so that we can use that resource to get information to our residents.
And it works because I got a text at 1:44 this morning.
There was wind. Yes.
Yeah,
Windy
I
out.
will say that if you do sign up, just be careful all the boxes that you check, because I was like, yes, I want phone calls, I want texts, I want emails, and then it's like, the phone's ringing and it's a text, it's like, yes, something. And then it'll be like, okay, cool, and then it would happen, like, seriously. Maybe we'll just sign up for one option or the other, and,
And as we try to add these things, I know this past couple weeks were you don't like to have these type of tests of communications, but we did have several water main breaks. And if you felt you got emails there or knew about it or not, it would be great to get that kind of feedback, especially as we transition to more messaging systems. So again, thank you, everyone. Doug, anything on your report you'd like to?
Yeah, unless someone has a question on my report, I think we're good.
So much stuff, thank you.
Yeah.
As we always do, we've got 2 in this night, 3, because we have public hearing, opportunities for public comment. We'll open up the second and final one for people here in person or on the Zoom. If you're in person, come on up front. On the Zoom, push the raised hand button. Seeing none, I will accept the motion to adjourn, noting that our next meeting is scheduled for the 20th of March. We have scheduled now 2 a month essentially, and we will always post on our website if that changes and be sending out our weekly emails with the agendas, or if as the planning board did last month, didn't actually have their second meeting, we'll make sure that everyone knows about it. But for now, our next meeting will be the 20th.
And it will be in person.
Correct. I got him first, do I have a second? All in favor? Right. Thank you, everyone.